Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As a person who is first time in his life in Central Asia and first time in his life in Bishkek, and this is now just 24 hours, and 7 hours has left, 7 hours I'm here, so you can estimate I don't know anything about Bishkek. But when I came with the airplane over the Kazakhstan grassland, suddenly, very on the horizon, I saw mountains, and I saw clouds, and I saw trees, and I thought, oh, this is the oasis. This must be the paradise where all the people live. And walking through the streets, I find you have wonderful alleys, you have wonderful parks, you have wonderful trees, wonderful greeneries, just everything which is 10 minutes apart from this place. More I couldn't reach. But I'm really impressed about the beauty of the city, and I'm also impressed about this building, because outside it's steamy hot, and in this room it's quite comfortable, and in the courtyard it's really, really nice and cool. So these are wonderful conditions. What to complain? So the complaint probably is the same we complain in Germany about mistakes because of the lack of laws. Germany has a very, very long tradition of very self-confident, strong cities and towns. This is a tradition which is more than 1,000 years old. And in Germany, this tradition is fixed in our constitution, that the cities and towns have the right to create laws for their own development and their own administration. So we have our own legislation, each city, for all the planning rules. We have an overall national rule which defines the instruments we have to use. But the decisions about the detailed planning are made in the city. And this is a tradition which is now up to 100 years old, and therefore we hardly know illegal buildings. But when in 1990, Eastern Germany and Western Germany were reunited, we had the opinion that, okay, people in the East do it like the West, then everything works fine. And this was an error, because just implementing the new law in East Germany from one day to another didn't fill the lack of knowledge and didn't fill the lack of experience. So administration and parliaments and politicians made in the first 5 to 10 years overall in East Germany mistakes, because they had the opinion, this building is fine, this use is fine, this architect is fine, this investor is good, this architect is good. And there are some mistakes, and okay, they are. We have to live with these things. And 20, 25 years after reunification, now we have everywhere in Germany a kind of same skills and same experience, and people go on with it. But the central basis is a federal and national law, and it's the right of the city and the town to decide by itself about its development. Second, most important, is the finance. In Germany, we have 3 fountains for financing of urban development, besides of taxes. And this is first to make a contract with the investor about all the urbanistic measures which we have to build accompanying the investment. So when there's an investment about 1,000 apartments, the investor has to build at least 2 or 3 kindergartens, and has to build a school, and he has to build all the roads, and he has to build all the technical infrastructure, and he has to build all the greenery. This law is just 25 years old in Germany, but it is very, very helpful. And it took these 25 years that all investors know, okay, when I come to Germany and when I invest in Germany, I have to pay for it. And also the investors have to pay the planning. And this is very funny, because the cities are responsible for the planning, and they do the planning, but the investor has to pay. He gets a planning law which he paid and he has no right to decide about it. So this is a very, very strong position of the cities. The second possibility, when a city in Germany has land which is going to be sold, we have two possibilities. We go to the market and say, we give it to the one who pay best. Or we say, this is the price, we make a competition, and the best concept wins the land. And within the best concept, we also decide about infrastructure. So we decide about architecture, we decide about urbanism, we decide about design, about social topics, as much as we want. So this we call a concept buy. And this is very important, but it's not really a common sense, because in Berlin, it took the last 5 years discussions with the finance administration to open the way to a concept buy. Up to 2010, I would say, the finance administration only made deals like Best Buy. Last financial fountain is a system of subsidies. In Germany, since the beginning of housing policy and urban development policy in the 1920s, housing and urban development is a topic of subsidies. And we have different programs, and one program I will explain in the context of the heritage of the socialist urban development, but also the heritage of the Western urban development. In East and in West Germany, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we had the huge problem of a lack of houses, a lack of apartments. And in East Germany, it was solved by the industrial building. In Germany, it was solved in the same urbanistic pattern with new settlements, huge settlements for 30,000, 50,000, or 100,000 people, also in high-rise buildings. And both developments in East and West had different advantages and disadvantages. In East Germany, we had a lack of greenery, we had unfinished roads and pavements, but we had a high standard in social infrastructure. In West Germany, we had living areas mainly for poor people. We had good technical infrastructure, but a minimum of social infrastructure. So when reunification came, the eastern towns had to deal with improving the infrastructure, which cost a lot of money, and the western cities had to deal with improved social problems. And they had no buildings, no kindergartens, no schools in which they could start programs. So in Germany, in the beginning of 1990, 2 programs of subsidies were started, which are very important still. The one is remodeling the city. So the state gives subsidies for improvement of roads and infrastructure, improvement of social infrastructure, and gives subsidies for demolishing, for example, 11-story high apartment houses without elevator. Or we have a program which is called Social City, which aims about improving the capacity and the skills of the people, and which encourages people to start a business, or encourage people to learn languages, or take better care for the children, or anything which is in a social context useful. The ecological problems you mentioned in Bishkek were the same in Germany in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even in East Germany in the 90s. We had this gray-brown air growing in the summer ever more, and sometimes you can still watch it in Munich in front of the Alps, very similar, located 100 kilometers north of the Alps. The Alps are 2,500 meters high, and rarely wind in summer, and the air stuck to the city, and the more cars are driving, the more the air is polluted. We made progress in this topic because of the systems of heating are improved. We rarely use brown coal for heating. The cars, the motors have improved a lot, and the regulations for industry have improved a lot. But when you think about the first idea of a healthy technical infrastructure, which was born in European cities around 1860, when we had cholera epidemics in Paris, in London, in Hamburg, and people started to build sewer systems. In Berlin, we are still at work to divide the rainwater sewer from the wastewater sewer. So not to pollute the spree. When we have heavy rain, all the rainwater and the wastewater go into the river, and therefore it's impossible to swim in the river. And we have a problem to clean up the spree by the division of these two sewer systems. And this is a program which will last for decades because it's very, very expensive. So I think these are the comments I want to make and our experiences from Berlin. Thank you.